Awesome. Let's see. Shuli. David. Laura. Zero. Nina. Simcha. And Maria. And Rosie.
Here.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, and, so on 269. Yes, sure. Yes. Okay. So, so we're dealing with the coverings of the Mishkan. We have the rams, the top, the special animal, and after it was made into a leather, now you have to cut it to size that's going to fit on top of the Mishkan. In order to cut it to size, you have to first score it. Make sure the cutting will be exact. So scoring would be making a line in order to cut on the dotted line. So we have the ruler that we would use if we're going to be cutting the paper. We want to make it exact. So we're going to have the ruler. We're going to make the size that we want, and we're going to make the line. Now, cutting using the scissor, we're going to be cutting it on the line that I want exact. The scoring would also be not only if I make a line, what are other ways that people would score, and what are different articles that people would make a line in order whether to cut or to do other activities that they want an exact line. What would be some of the things? So if you're going to be sawing wood, you would make a line on the wood where you're going to be sawing. Anyone does any work with dresses, skirts, making hems?
Yeah.
So how do we make a straight hem?
You have to make a line.
Okay, how are you going to make the line?
With a ruler.
And
Chalk.
chalk. Okay, so you have the one that already the professionals, they have their chalk line. It's on a string that has the chalk. And then you make it tight, and then you pull it, and you let it go, and it makes the line. So doing that line on Shabbos is this malacha. So whether it is actual, whether it is doing by pen or by scoring, it could be done if you are sawing wood. You might do it with a nail. Make the ruler and use a nail to go across to make the place where you want to do the sawing. So this would be either with chalk, or even if you're going to be using without anything at all. Let's say I want to tear this page in half. In order to do so, what do? I've just done scoring. This is the malach on Shabbos, because my intention is I want to tear this exactly to this size, and I just did the scoring. So whether the scoring was actually my pen that I did the scoring, or I folded it in such a tight way that this is going to be the scoring. This is a malacha, forbidden act on Shabbos. Now, what would be, again, with folding a piece of paper that would be permissible? Give me an example.
Page in a book.
Okay, very good example. Some people, when they're reading and they want to know where they stopped, and it doesn't have, some people are very careful about their books, and their books, after even using it for a whole year, it'll be just as new as when they first opened it up. Some people are very careful about their books. Other people, whenever they finish reading and they want to go back to the chapter, they will fold the corner. Is that permissible on Shabbos?
No.
Yes, because it's only for scoring, for tearing, for cutting, for tearing. There's no malacha in folding a page. It was only because I was going to cut this page that this became a malacha. It's only because I'm going to cut it. That's my intention, is to cut. So the malacha of mishartek is only making a mark to cut or to make use of this line. So let's say when it came to the seamstress, she made a chalk line on the hem. She was not going to cut the hem. She was going to sew it on that line. The same thing would also be, you have unlined paper, or in the case, you have the parchment that you're going to write a mezuzah, or you're going to write a Sefer Torah. There you want to write on a straight line. So you're going to score a straight line in order to write. So the scoring of the line has a purpose for use, either writing, cutting, or any other use. But when it comes to just folding, so folding a page at the end for use later does not go into this category. Another example is, there was a very good example of folding where it's permissible. Where's another folding that would be permissible with paper? Let's go. Permissible. Here we go. Okay, you're putting up paper napkins. Either you could put the paper out, napkin out straight, but most people don't like to put it out straight. What they do is they will fold it at a triangle. Am I allowed to make this triangle on Shabbos with my napkin? Yes. If I want to fold it this way, can I make it this way?
Yes.
Also, so there's no, as long as I'm not going to make a paper boat or a paper hat, as long as I'm not going to make an object with this paper, I could fold it any way I would like to make it fancy, however, folding it 3 times, 4 times, 10 times, whatever it may be. But you're not making a certain object with it. You have those who make the birds, you pull the tail and the head starts to move. Okay.
So you can fold things as long as you're not doing it to like cut it or
Use it for
sew
writing.
it or something.
Yes,
Just as long as you just fold it.
that's correct. That's correct. Okay. Now, how about you want to cut an orange? You take the knife and you make, how do some people, when they want to peel the orange, what do they do with the knife? You make scoring, you make lines. Later, when it comes to peel the orange, it's going to come off and at those exact lines. Are you allowed to do that on Shabbos?
Yes.
Let's hear. Yes, no? What do you think?
Because it's.
We are doing it in order to cut or tear in a certain place. That is, the intention is so. Question is, does it apply to an orange? And
No, I don't think it
let's, did you ever go to a Chabad house and see people who are actually going to score? Where do you see that scoring is actually a part of the Shabbos experience? There we go. Shabbos scoring, we make a line. What's the purpose of this line?
does. See where you're gonna.
We're going to cut. In other words, it's not just a symbol, but actually you make a score, you make a line. And in order, when you're going to make after you make the hamaitzi, you're going to cut on this scored line. The purpose is to make the time between the bracha and the cutting and eating of the hamaitzi as close as possible. Now, at one point, our challahs are very, very soft and spongy, and to cut them is a very easy activity. Then you have the sourdough challahs. Anyone experience a challah, the challah, there's a sourdough challah. I think over there the cutting is really, you have to have a good sharp knife, and it does take a time. And there the scoring will make a difference because you already started it, and now you're going to save how much? A split second, less than a split second. It just shows you how important it is to not to make an interruption between the bracha and the eating. Make it as close as possible. How precious time is. Even a millisecond is also worthwhile to do that before you make the hamaitzi. What happens if you made a light score, and now you want to, after you made the hamaitzi, you want to cut the challah, and you can't find that scoring line, what should you do? Should you look for it or make a new line? Because
defeats the purpose of your wasting.
that's right, it's going to take you more time to look for it than it's going to take you time to cut it anew. So we have to know the reason behind it. It's not just a symbol, it's meant to be a time saver. And if it's going to be a time waster, then don't waste your time. Okay. So when it comes to food, so scoring does not apply. You could do that on the challah, you could do that on the orange, and if some people want to cut a pie and make them in sections, how big each piece should be, make a score. All of this is permissible on Shabbos. Enjoy the pie. Okay, now that we've made the score, what was done next? I don't see, is there anything here that, okay. Over here is also, if you do the same scoring with, they tell you even with a fingernail, let's say again with my paper, instead of folding it this way, I took my fingernail and I made a line. But its purpose is it's going to be my line for which I'm going to do the cutting. So that's why it only comes together with my scissor, and I'm actually going to cut it. That is the reason, that's when it becomes a malacha. The intention is to cut it on the line, on the size that I have designated. Now comes the cutting itself. So again, we had now, they scored the hide, they scored the covering for the Mishkan, and now it's going to be cut. Now, we've had many, many terms before, until we come to this malacha. We've had a number of malachas that have the same idea as cutting, and we're going to try to see what is the difference between these different categories. Each one has its own malacha category. Cutting. So here we're actually going to be cutting whatever we made the mishaltate, whatever we made the line, the scoring line. There we're not going. The next step is the cutting it. Doing that on Shabbos. Cutting to size is a malacha. So we had. So kotzer is cutting, gozes is cutting, korea is tearing. So let's see, and mechatek is tearing. Each one is a separate malacha. One is not related to the other. You could have someone doing an act that you could be possibly doing a number of activities together. But anyway, so mechatek is cutting something to size. Kotzer is reaping. Can anyone define the word reaping? When is that word used for cutting? To reap is to cut something that is growing. Reaping is doing the harvest. Kotzer would be taking an apple off a tree, taking a leaf off a branch. The kotzer is only things that grow from the ground. So that is its own category, its own identity. So that's called kotzer. Gozes is shearing. Shearing means cutting the wool off a sheep. So anything that is attached to a living thing, whether the thing is still alive or not, would go into the category of gozes. So in this category would be cutting hair, cutting nails, cutting a pimple, a scab, the things that are attached to the body. All of this would go into the category of gozes. It's not chotet, it's not machatech, it's not cutting to size. This has its own category, cutting something from a living thing that what came from a living thing. And then we have korea is tearing. What's the difference between tearing and cutting? So what happens? Just let's take for an example. If I were to take this paper again, made it, scored it, then I tore it by hand. So I call that, I'm not cutting it with a scissor, I'm cutting it with my hand. Would that be machatech, even though I'm doing it by hand?
No.
Yes, because that is the way you tear paper. Tearing paper is also done by hand. It's normal. I mean, when it comes to paper, I don't always have to look for a scissor. If I'm good at it, and made a tight tear, I can tear it very well. Okay. Now, so how does that differ than korea? Does anyone remember? Does anyone tell me the difference that when I said cutting means the normal way how it's cut with a tool, or if it's done by hand, that's normal. So why would that not? Is that called korea or is that called cutting? Machatech or korea? Which one is? What I did was machatech. I cut it to size. So what's korea?
Ray was tearing it in order to repair.
Tearing to repair. What were we tearing in the Mishkan?
Curtains.
The curtains. Remember, there was the curtain that had a hole in it. And now you have to make repairs. So you're going to now is tear it, whether you tear it by scissor or you tear it by hand. It only applies to material, pliable material that is repairable, sewable, those type of things. Machatech could be a board. It could be a steel beam, anything that is cut to size. When I'm cutting, I'm not cutting to size, I'm cutting because I'm making a repair. So it's two different types of intentions that are involved in this malacha. Physically, it's tearing. The Rabbanan says it doesn't make a difference why you're tearing. Whether you're tearing something that is not necessarily to for a purpose. You're just tearing paper because you just want to tear it. So they say you can't do it. You can't destroy things on Shabbos without a purpose, unless you're opening it up for food. Then goes into the category that you are trying to get into, the food that you are going to. So we identified each of these malachas that seem to be the same objective, taking something from another place, tearing something off, but each one has its own category. So like this on page 271. So as part of the process, so taking the tabernacle, the Mishkan, they would cut the height of the ram and the tachash according to precise measurements. So here again, cutting to precise measurements in order to spread them out as a tent over the tabernacle. The malach is cutting leather according to precise measurement. And the Tola is something that is usually done by hand, usually by a measurement that's all done in its normal way. So all this is a Torah prohibition. Rabbinic prohibition is cutting something in an unusual way by hand that's usually done by tool. Okay, now fabric or thread would go into this category if it is done to a specific measure. Tearing a string, not at a particular measure that you want that size string, would go into a different category. The Torah prohibition would be tearing a string for the precise measure. You want 7 inches of string, and then you measure the 7 inches, and then you cut the 7 after the end of the 7 inches. That was the malacha. Now, however, destroying a string would be a rabbinic. Why are you doing it on Shabbos? Don't do it on Shabbos. If, however, there is a purpose, a Shabbos purpose for it, then you are allowed to do so. Now you have some of the barbecue chicken that is done whole. Sometimes they tie the legs when they're going to put it in the rotisserie. So they have this string around the legs. Also, you have a meat that is put into a netting. What's that called? Which meat is, who knows? They have the meat, it's put into a netting, and then when you bake it, roast it, or whatever you do, it comes, you take it out with the netting itself, because the meat itself has different parts to it, and you want it to come out nice when you're going to cut it. It's going to come out in a very, very fancy way of cutting with the rolls and everything else, how it comes out. So now you've taken it out on Shabbos. You're ready to, it's a roast. Different roasts come in their spring nettings. Now you're coming to eat the roast. Is there an issue how you're going to open the roast? Can we open the netting of the roast on Shabbos? Can we cut the rope around the chicken that was rotisserie? Is there an issue? And they have also another, they used to have something that was called, they used to fill a part of the chicken with filling, and then used to sew it up. No one have that? There's a European type of, Jewish European called Helzel. They used to stuff it with all kinds of good, with onions and all these different nice fillings. And then when you're ready to use it, you cut the thread and you're ready to eat. Can you do that on Shabbos?
Yeah.
Now, what category, if the answer is no, what category, why no? What category would it go into?
Isn't it cutting?
Am I cutting, do I need a certain size of thread or string after I finish with it? Or am I just cutting it to get into it? Get into it. So I'm not looking for any size. I'm doing it in order to eat. And therefore that is permissible on Shabbos. So you want to have a roast. You don't have to take the netting off the roast before Shabbos. You could keep it that way, and on Shabbos you'll open up the netting and you'll have your Makabed Shabbos Kodesh. So that is permissible because it's not the size, it is for food, and therefore there was no restriction on it. However, if you do cut thread for size, string for size, then it is a Torah prohibition, that is the malacha. There's a cork, especially when it comes to champagne. After you take the cork out of the wine bottle, it expands. And now if you want to use that as to close back up the wine bottle, sometimes it will fit back in, sometimes it, especially with the champagne, expands so much, you can't fit it back in. So, can you use a knife and cut the cork to trim it in order to be able to fit it back into the bottle?
No.
What malach is this?
Cutting.
The chatech, which is cutting, because you do want to cut it to
Size.
which size?
The
The
bottom.
bottom. So that would be a Torah prohibition, an actual Torah prohibition. Same thing is also you have a piece of wood. I don't know how many people would do this, but you want to use it as a toothpick. Can you do that on Shabbos? Again, no, because you want a certain size. You want it to be able to fit into the mouth. It's not going to fit unless you have a very big mouth. So cutting it down to size, if you do want it at a certain size, that would be a Torah prohibition. Now, cutting paper, toilet paper, cutting a plastic bag under marking. Here we have, it matters what we're talking about. Now, you do have the perforated markings on the plastic bags. You have a roll of bags, either it's garbage bags or plastic bags for food bags. So I wanted to bring a roll like that I had in the house. And I started taking it out, and guess what? It was for Shabbos. As I could put, even though it was a roll of the plastic bags that are used for food. So usually they're all attached, and then you have to tear it. And you have two halachas that are done. One thing is that you're tearing it for size. You want it under perforated. And then the second thing is, before you tear it, it's going to be sealed. Then when you tear it, now you have a bag that you've just made a vessel. You've made a usable bag. So these are two halachas that were done by cutting the plastic bag that's on a roll. So you've done two, whether it's the garbage bags or whether it's the plastic bags that are for food. So I tried to get this here in class and tried to put, it was a Shabbos one. As soon as I started pulling, it just came apart. There was nothing to tear. So I do know now that there is, if someone does want to have these type of rolls, there is a Shabbos roll that you could beforehand see to it that it's not attached, and that would be nice to use on Shabbos. If you do have attached ones, what you do before Shabbos, you have to, with these garbage bags or the storage bags, whatever it may be, if they are on a roll and they are attached before Shabbos, you make the supply for what you need. Same thing is also going to be, let's say we have our aluminum foil, where usually it's cut at a certain size. So all of this should be done before Shabbos, and Shabbos you could not cut it to size, then you would have the malacha of cutting to size. Machatef, a Torah prohibition. Toilet paper, again, it should prepare before Shabbos. Those who do have the box, so some of them come in different types. Some of them are all attached. They're loosely attached, but you pull them and they tear from the one that is before it. That cannot be used on Shabbos. So if you're going to have a box of tissues, test it before Shabbos if it is Shabbos, for Shabbos use. At one time, I think in the stores that I see here, different brands, they are not attached. You'd have to test it before Shabbos, but at one time, all of the tissues were attached. And that was the norm, was that they were attached, so you really have to make an effort to see to it that you're getting ones that are able to be used on Shabbos. Could you get into the box some before Shabbos if you didn't open it before Shabbos? So we've done this a number of times. Again, what we have to do is, we have, okay, it's sealed, has it's a closed, you have the thing, and usually when you open up during the week, you do want to open, you don't want to tear the box, it should be all over the place, but you want to just tear this little closed thing. It's a perforated, it's a special size, you want it to size. Doing that on Shabbos, opening it to size is this malacha that we are, because your intention is to open it up neatly and to have it only in this size. That's why you're opening it up on this side. So on Shabbos, you cannot open it from here. How about opening it from here? What's the issue here? It is Korea. It is tearing because it's the same as it goes into the malacha of you said correctly. What did you say that the issue was? The glue, right? It's the same as we're taking two separate things, and as you are tearing apart a sewn material where the thread is keeping together two pieces. And when you're tearing it, you're taking apart the two pieces. That is korea. So it is the two pieces that are attached by a third item, which is the thread. Here we have two pieces, this cardboard is attached together by the glue. So taking it apart, ungluing it, would be the same as korea, as tearing the two pieces of material that are held together by the thread. Same thing would also go into this category, would also be the staple. So this would also be something that is held together by two pieces that are held together by a third thing. Taking that apart is the malacha. So we can't open it up from here. So now where could we open it up from?
Can you cut it with a knife?
You can cut it with a knife. Now, what we're going to be careful is that is going to be not any letters, no erasing.
The picture, the one with the flower, that's okay?
Flowers also not, because it's a symbol, so you'd have to find the white space over here and make it so that not to use this box as a storage, but rather in a destructive way, so you're not making it constructive, because since this is sealed, now you open it up, now it's going to be a box that's going to be a storage for the tissues. So you're going to do it in such a way that it should be destructive, take the tissues out, and this is going in the garbage. And the tissues you'll save. Yes, your question.
No, I was also asking like cutting the flowers.
Yes, so the flowers are a symbol, it'd be just like letters.
You said it's food that comes in a box just like that. You cut it with a knife. And then inside the package, it has like a clear plastic, the wrap over it. Can you take that plastic, also have to cut it? Is that what that?
How is the plastic being held together? Huh? The glue, so you unglue, not in the glue place, you do it the other way, you do the same thing. Yes, cut it. Okay, so what did we say we do if it's on a roll? What do we do then? Huh? Yeah. Do it before Shabbos. If it's a roll, do it before Shabbos. On Shabbos itself, so you cannot tear underperforated because you want that size. So that would go into machatach. Tearing it between the perforation, you do it in an unusual way with your knuckle. They tell you to do it with your elbows. I don't know how you could do it. I tried to do it last time, it didn't work. So I say you do it with your knuckles. That would be the best way to do it. So that would be okay. Cutting food. So then again, cutting food to any size that you want is not an issue. That is done fine. However, cutting, other than eating, look at page 274, the last paragraph. However, one cuts food for a purpose other than eating, such as one who cuts a potato in order to stand a candle in it. An innovative way of making a candle holder. Took a potato, and you have the stories that they tell about the Hanukkah lift. There was no Hanukkah lights. And they had to find the, some fuel, some butter or something. And they couldn't find that you could make a wick. They took it from the garment. The stories that the secret Hanukkah lights. And then they took a potato and cut it in half and hollowed it out. But anyway, doing that on Shabbos is using the potato as a candle holder. You're not using it as a food, and you're cutting it to size. So that would be into this malacha, even though it is a food article. But since you're not using it as food, so then that's an issue. And some will also put into this category when you're making, let's say you hollow out a watermelon and you're trying to make some designs and make it into a boat or whatever it may be. This should be done before Shabbos, not on Shabbos itself. But it will go into the category of writing. That's going to be our next malacha. So. Any questions on this? Let me see if I have anything that Among the things that are, that go into this category as well, we use cutouts. Cutouts of these different things, whether it is children's cutouts where you have the little paper dolls, where you cut them around and you have the little people that were on, they're all put on one sheet. Then you cut them out and have your figures. That would be in this category, machata, you're cutting to exact size. Same thing, let's say if you have a picture and you want to cut the picture out of this page, cutting it out to size, that would go into this category, machata. So now you do have little packets of sugar, little packets of salt, little packets of ketchup, little packets of mustard. You have those little packets that are sometimes served in different places. Can you open it on Shabbos? So generally, when we were taught not to tear anything on Shabbos, try to do everything before Shabbos. Now, technically, since this is salt, sugar, mustard, ketchup, you want to use it for Shabbos. Can you open up the packet? Since it's food? Yes. Okay. Now, what do we have to be careful about? Not to tear any letters. Now, there is a line on the sugar in the corner. Little line tells you to tear it in this little corner. Can you cut it in this little corner? Now, are you doing it for size? Or are you doing it because they suggest that if you cut it anywhere else, it's going to spill over all over the place. You want it in a little corner, to be able to, it's not going to spread out, it's just going to be able to do it. So they say that most people, their intention is not to cut an exact size. The little indication is only a suggestion. It doesn't say you have to, no one's going to look at you and say, you cut a little lines. But it's a suggestion to you that you cut it there and that's going to be most convenient. So again, your intention should not be that you want to cut it to a certain size in order to be able to use it properly. And if it's not that way, it's going to be too much, it's going to spill over the place. That you try to do it as if the lines were not there. That's not, you're not doing it specifically because the lines are there.
So you're talking about like the little packets of sugar that don't have the perforation
Right,
on the corner?
Right.
Oh,
No, there's no preparation there. It's just the dotted lines that are there tell you, here's where you should cut. So it's not a preparation, it's just a suggestion. And therefore, either you take the suggestion or you don't take the suggestion. If you do take the suggestion, you're not doing it because you want a certain size. It's not your intention, so that would be fine. Again, we try to avoid tearing anything on Shabbos. Everything should be done before, all packages, all boxes, all of these things should be done before. But if it is done so way, so you do have the option of opening it up. So let's see what else I have here. Package, tamper-proof. What about cutting pills to size? People who are they think the pills is something that are permissible for those people. They're permissible in Shabbos, but they have to cut it to size. Is it permitted to cut it size?
Yes.
Yes, because if we go into the category of food, so that would be permissible as well. And some of the seals are there only for convenience. You could take off some of the seals that are on the wine bottles. So you could take them off. They're not. You don't have to cut. Take them off at their particular place. It's just for your convenience. It's not something that you are cutting to size. It's just trying to get to it. So this would be again permissible. Same thing. You have different tabs. Again, you're taking it off because you want to get into it. It's not because you want this particular size tab. And if it's going to be different, it's not going to work. So that's not your intention. So it doesn't go into the category of machatech where your intention is it has to be this size and not anything else. Okay, our next topic is going to be writing. Read the chapter ahead. Have a wonderful day. Today we had a perfect attendance.